Mommy has something she wants you to do.
Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the next episode in my Hack and or Slash series. This is the series where I take a look back at horror franchises of old, preferably 80s, or at least ones that have their roots in the 80s, and see if they still hold up to today's eyes and or standards. So, for those of you who've been paying attention, for the last month or two, I've been reviewing the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series. Finished up Wes Craven's New Nightmare about a week ago, and am ready to move on to what some consider non-canon movies in the series, right? We have today's review, Freddy vs. Jason, and the upcoming remake from 2010. So, I have already reviewed Freddy vs. Jason when I did my Friday the 13th entire series movie review. I'll try to put something of it maybe up here in a card somewhere. Who knows? So I'm really going to be brief on this one, or as brief as I can be. I wasn't thrilled with the original one I did, just for the simple fact that I was trying another microphone setup, and I had a shotgun mic, but the one I have, it sounds awful. It just sounds tinny and bad, so I don't mind redoing this one again. But once again, it won't not be as thorough as the original was. So if you want to see a more thorough review, go see that one, but this one I'll try to keep succinct. So all that notwithstanding, let's get into it. So yes, today we're going to look at 2003's Freddy vs. Jason.
Let us do no such damn thing.
Yes, the Battle Royale we were all waiting for, at least all of us fanboys back in the 80s, when we always would theorize what was going to happen. And originally, Friday the 13th Part 7 was going to be that movie, but New Line and Paramount just couldn't get on the same page. They had, whose platform was it going to be on? Was it going to be on Paramount? It's going to be New Lines? So where was it going to be? So we were just left in the dark, and Part 7 turned into basically Jason versus Carrie. Or not Carrie, whatever you want to call her, for the supernatural foe. So it was also alluded to at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, when Freddy's glove comes up out of the ground and pulls Jason's masks in. But we all know those parts, right? So here we are. We finally got it. And let me start off by saying I'm glad that we didn't get it when we wanted it, because the technology just wasn't there, and the budget probably wouldn't have been there either, to do this film any kind of justice back in the 80s, maybe even in the 90s. So I'm kind of glad that we waited. So was it worth the wait? Let's find out. So let me give you a real brief plot synopsis, then we'll get on to the pros and cons of this movie. So plot is kind of cool, actually. It's starts off with kind of a Freddy montage, and he is apparently in hell because he's been defeated, right? So he's wanting to figure out a way to get topside again, right? So he's in his long travels through the bowels of hell, as he puts it. He finds Jason Voorhees, who's apparently sleeping. I guess Jason in the real world. Maybe he finds Jason's consciousness down there. Who knows? Who cares, right? And so he sends a res spell up to Jason there.
Rise from your grave.
Rise up, Jason! Your work isn't finished! Hear my voice and live again!
And, a whiff, off we go.
Make them remember me, Jason!
Freddy's big plan is to use Jason as the conduit for Freddy's return. So basically, he convinces Jason that he is Pamela. I guess he always does what Pamela says, mommy, mommy, mommy. And sends him off on a merry, chase down to Springwood. Luckily, Jason has a built-in Pathfinder. He knows where Springwood is, right? And so he goes there, and like I said, the whole premise is for Freddy to get him to kill people, make them think that Freddy's coming back so he can reinvade the dreams of the people of Springwood, specifically the teenagers, right? Because there's been a huge concerted effort on the part of the town to wipe any existing record and or memory of Freddy from the young people of this town.
It's gotta be him, right? It's gotta be Freddy Krueger.
Hey, don't even say that son of a bitch's name out loud. Let's just keep it together.
We've been through too much to let this thing spread now.
And they even have gone so far as to institutionalize a bunch and give them Hypnosil, the drug that was mentioned in Nightmare Part 3, Dream Warriors.
They covered him up, Will. They never told us about Freddy because that's how they decided to beat him. They treated him like he was a fucking disease, and they locked up all the kids who made contact with him.
To block their, I don't know if it's REM sleep or whatever it must be, basically stops them from dreaming, which would make a whole institution full of completely lunatic and crazed people, but we're not worried about that. So, but Freddy can't come back until his name gets back out there and people remember. So basically that's it. He turns Jason loose on Springwood to ramp up the body count and to get people talking again about Freddy Krueger. Along the way, we're introduced to our group of horror fodder and teens who are obviously mostly going to be victims. But really, the only people we need to talk about are Monica Keenan, who plays Lori, and Jason Ritter, who plays Will, her boyfriend. Right? But everyone else is just completely tertiary. Yeah, they have a little bit of screen time, but no one really cares about them. I guess the I can't remember what the cop's name was. Scott, I think. He's played by Lachlan Monroe. He wasn't too bad either. He seems to be the only cop in town who's not in on on what's going on with the Freddy cover-up, and he seems kind of genuine in his desire to solve this crime. He thinks it's Freddy again, but he's promptly put down back into his place. But yeah, so this is all just a means to an end here of bringing the two together, because the problem with Freddy's plan here is Jason decides, I don't think he's going to leave. He's going to just butcher everybody in this, at least every young person in this town. He goes from, he has like a homing beacon in his mind to find teenagers, I swear, because he goes right from the house full of teenagers partying to the gigantic rave out in the cornfield where everyone's partying to wreak his own particular brand of havoc. And at that point, he kills Gib, played by Catherine Isabel. She's kind of a horror alum, if you will. And steals Freddy's kill right before he can close the deal. So Freddy is kind of weak, and he needs to get at least a kill or a soul or two to get some power back. And so now he sees the problem. Jason's not going to leave anything for him. He actually hatches his own plan to bring Jason into the dream world where he is king, right? So a big chase ensues, basically, with Jason chasing down our favorite band of teenagers through basically the asylum, and they're trying to get the Hypnosil so they don't dream, and they can, formulate better plans. This whole time, they're like completely figuring things out somehow, like in the very best Scooby-Doo tradition.
Wait a minute. Freddy died by fire, Jason by water. How can we use that?
And so they figure this is where they start espousing about, Freddy should be afraid of fire and Jason should be afraid of water. See, this gets into a bit of the problems of the direction and directing of this movie, and somewhat of the writing, of course, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But long story short, Freddy finds a way to dope Jason up after he kills a bunch more of the teens. Get him into the dream world, and then it's on. So we are treated to the first, I'll go ahead and spoil it right now, the first of the fights between the two in the dream world. In this one, of course, Freddy gains the upper hand. I mean, he's basically invincible in the dream world, right? But Jason is definitely holding his own for a while until a real Due Machina here, for lack of a better term, is all of a sudden Jason is terrified of water. Come on! Right, so he turns into this quivering mass of man-child, and Freddy begins to torment him in the dream instead of just offing him, like, for some reason, I don't know, Freddy can't help himself, right? And so we're treated about some flashback sequences. Kind of cool looking, actually, to be honest with you. And then at the same time, the kids are transporting Jason's body that they somehow lugged around in his van keeping him drugged up and keeping him asleep to get him to Crystal Lake, because they figured if they can get him to Crystal Lake, he'll be on his home turf.
Best case scenario, Jason wins. He'll already be home, back where he belongs. I mean, why follow us anymore?
And if Freddy wins?
At least Jason has home field advantage.
They've already figured out that you can bring Freddy out of the dream. There's like so many mixes from part one, from the different series, but the part one of the Nightmare film is a really heavy influence on this movie. So they're going to bring him back to Crystal Lake so the two can duke it out, and whoever wins, or preferably both of them, kill each other, then it's best for everyone, right? Well, eventually, after a lot of this torment inside Jason's mind, he does wake up. The tranquilizers don't work long on him, and he's flung from the vehicle. The vehicle crashes, and they happen to be in Crystal Lake. Perfect timing, I'm telling you here. So, all right, Jason's wandering around. Monica goes into the dream state and grabs a hold of Freddy and is pulled out of the dream state right as Jason shows up. Man, the timing is impeccable in this movie. So with some clashing heavy metal riff guitars, which do feature heavily throughout these fights, by the way, we are treated to the actual ending fight. And I'll go ahead and probably kind of leave it here and let those who have possibly not seen this movie to time to check it out before I completely spoil it for you. But suffice it to say, it is a Battle Royale. It's very worthy, actually, of a final fight. Much better than I expected. And, there's a little bit of fun to be had. It's over the top and ridiculous, but, that's a lot of this movie. So, at the very end, we basically have two people left standing, boyfriend and Lori. And that's that. And then we're treated to kind of a cliffhanger ending, of course, but there is a definitive victory here to be had. Sort of. Almost like a Pyrrhic victory, but whatever. So that is Freddy vs. Jason in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and talk about some pros and cons of this movie, and then I'll get on to an overall score. So, some pros. We finally got to see the big fight we all been wanting to see, right? Cool. It'd been years and years and years in speculation and kind of in development hell, and then it finally come. In fact, it was I think so long planned that they actually released Jason X just to keep the rights and the character fresh in people's mind, like a year or two before this movie. And it helped because this movie made a lot of money, apparently. And a lot of people wanted to see this, The people like myself who grew up in the 80s were really itching to see this, so it was kind of a fanboyism come true, So I think probably 90% of the audience was us, The look of the film is actually pretty good. It's well shot. I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me on this. I love the color palette swaps they do between Jason scenes and Freddy scenes. Jason scenes, being water-based, have a kind of blue tinge and filter to them. The Freddy scenes are the red for the fire, And there's, in the dream sequence, it pops back and forth, which is, I know, it's cheesy, but it works. And there's a really cool scene in the dream sequence also when Freddy realizes that Laurie's in the dream too, and then he kind of goes into demon form and jumps out of the water on some cool wire work. A lot of wire work in this movie, by the way. And it switches all to the saturated red effect. It's cheesy, but I kind of liked it. It was it's different, and the movie's pretty striking visually. A lot of cool angles. Not a whole lot of shaky cam in this. Not a lot of super close ups, so you can't see the action. The director, I think, is quite adept at the Hong Kong style filming. Ronnie Yu, and so that definitely comes through in some of the bigger fight set pieces, right? Makeup effects generally look fairly good. They went with an odd choice of a blend of Jason's human and zombified form. He's more zombie than human, especially in action, but his look is a lot different. He has both eyes now for some reason. They gave him these really puppy dog eyes, and they tried to make him kind of sympathetic, basically with his backstory and all that. So you have someone for the audience to root for whatever reason. They're two maniacal killers, for goodness sake. No one should be rooting for these guys, but it's just fun to watch, I guess. So designs are pretty good, but a little bit off. Freddy looks okay. He still looked better back in the mid-'80s and later 80s than he did in this movie. At least parts 3 and 4 when he looked amazing. I think overshadow and top what he looks like here. I don't like his glove. He's got the longer hook fingers or blades like you always see in the movie posters, but when he had actually tended to have straight little blades on his finger glove, but finger glove, razor glove, whatever you want to call it. So both killers have their iconic weapons. Jason with his machete, Freddy with his glove, and it all looks pretty good. The final fight and battle scene, there's blood flying everywhere, spurting in ridiculous amounts. This is also a con, because you can see a lot of like the squibs and the compressed air they had blowing the blood in these giant mists of blood. It's just ridiculous how much blood spurts in this movie, but yeah, it's all fun. It's the cool thing is like the ending is not drenched. Neither of the fights really are totally drenched with CGI, which what you would expect in a movie like this to pull off some of the stuff they pulled off. But there's a lot of cool stunt work going on here. So it's not just two guys in the middle of a field slugging it out. They're climbing onto different buildings, and things are just changing, constantly changing, like the field of battle.
Up here!
Robert Englund reprises his role with relish. He's always gold. So he's another plus in this movie. It's definitely more of a Freddy story than a Jason story, even though I think you probably see more Jason in it, and he definitely has more of a body count in this. For the body count people, there's plenty of kills to be had here. I really like that opening kill a lot, actually, of Jason, like, impaling the girl through the tree with that machete. They show from the beginning how powerful he is. They made him super strong in this movie. He flings people like 100 yards or some nonsense like that. He flings Freddy in the last fight like a whole house over and up through the roof. It's pretty crazy how strong they made him in this. So, but yeah, there's some cool flashback points in this movie. I like to say that the franchise are respected, but if it's more like on the Freddy side of things that was respected. It was definitely not respected so much on the Jason side, because they completely changed some things about him, like character trait, afraid of water, got 2 eyes for some reason. He's a zombie Jason. He's not rotted out looking. He still looks pretty fleshy. The story goes on and on. So, yeah, I mean, there's some bad CGI, but there's also some pretty cool imagery. Like I love that scene where they're all in the psych ward or whatever, and they had all those kids on the table sitting down with the things over their eyes because they kept them in like basically a vegetative state, safe from Freddy, right?
This is D-Wing. These are the ones who wouldn't stop dreaming.
And then they all sit up. That looks awesome. That's very, very creepy, and it's very distinct and striking imagery. Cool stuff there. And everything else notwithstanding, what we care about when we go to see this movie? We want to see the fight, right? So let's talk about the fight real fast. It's great. Both fights are really, really good. Like, they beat the Hades out of each other, and especially in the second fight, they're ripping pieces off of each other. Just innumerable slashes, cuts, jabs, punches, impalements. They get it all. Jason takes the brunt of it, as to be expected. But I think it's very worthy. It would be very, very easy to make this movie on the premise of, it's the Freddy vs. Jason, confrontation y'all were looking for, and then give us a crappy fight. I remember there was a movie, I think it was back in the 80s, 90s, it was called Vampire vs. Werewolf. And at the end, all they did was kind of look at each other, and I think 2 blows were struck, and then the movie was basically done, right? That's how it normally is when you get the big baddies together to fight.
You're right.
That or it's an overblown CGI fest. This is neither. This fight goes on for like 20 minutes. Very satisfying. Remember how, like, in Underworld, the first movie, when it was this huge thing about vampires versus werewolves, right? It's funny that I brought that up again. And then they never technically physically fight, or you never really see them fight. You see the hybrid fight in the head vampire fight, Elder, at the end, but there's not really anything in between. The Ray's fight and the Elder lasts like 2 seconds. And you'll see them, one of them snarling at each other, and the other one snarling at each other, and then it's over, and then they're just shooting at each other again. Well, this one's very meaty and visceral, and they are in each other's faces and going for blood. So it's just so nice to see a genuinely good fight payoff, and it's carnage incarnate. So cool part there. So, music is all right. Everything else is just kind of serviceable. Nothing too spectacular there. Some cons. The acting, of course, is atrocious from just about everybody who isn't Robert Englund. So, let's just get on to that. No one cares about these characters, these tertiary characters, and they're just, like I said, they're just there for the upping the body count, as is they are in most, slasher type films. Monica Keenan is, I guess, okay as a final girl. She makes some leaps, that's for sure. And it's hard to think that any of these people are in high school. They're supposed to be high school teenagers, but these ones look really obvious, right?
You're all women, I could tell just by looking at you.
Talked about all that before, so no sense getting into that. The story is pretty stupid. It's a cool premise, but everything else in between is pretty dumb. Almost anyone who's watched this movie will just skip right to the fight scenes. That's all they come to see this movie for, and unfortunately, they padded the movie a little too much in areas in between that. Dream sequences are nothing too special. I do like the boiler room one with Gibb. That one's pretty freaky. It's getting back to Freddy's old, modus operandi. And I don't know, it's so bad that they gave these stupid weaknesses. Freddy's never shows up. They gave stupid weaknesses to Jason, being afraid of water. Since when? He's never been afraid of water. But once again, Ronnie, you never watched the Friday series. I don't know about Nightmare on Elm Street before, so he didn't really know anything about it. I'm sure his writers were saying, this is what Jason would do, and he's probably just saying, okay, let's go ahead and shoot it. They made Ken Kersinger the new Jason just based on his size. I don't hate on his performance like a lot of people do. It's just slow and lumbering for the most part, but he does have some very aggressive movements, like when he's fighting Freddy. He looks like he's really trying to cut Freddy in half, which he's done to other characters in this movie, by the way, because of his power. So I kind of dig on that. So I don't hate his performance completely. He's just doing, I'm sure, what the director told him to do: be big, be gigantic, be lumbering, and look unstoppable. So it is what it is. But it could have been CJ, and it could have been Kane, and it probably would have been a little bit better for it. But who knows? It might not have been, just because of the direction of this movie. So. Yeah, I don't know. Everything else outside the fights this week, but that's to be expected. So let's go ahead and get into the star rating of this movie. So Freddy vs. Jason is very difficult to properly rate. As a movie, it's pretty weak. As a horror movie, it's But as fanboyism, oh my gosh, this is off the freaking charts, man. It gives you everything you wanted. You got Jason doing Jason stuff, Freddy trying to do Freddy stuff, an overarching theme story. You have a little bit of backstory for each of the characters, if not a little bit, and then a gigantic freaking, fisticuffs at the end. That's what Fanboy wanted, and this movie delivers in that. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of go weird on this one. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5, right? This movie is just kind of entertaining. I know I've kind of, poo-pooed on some of the stuff that wasn't the fight, but I mean, it's not completely unwatchable. As far as some slashers goes, it's even, I guess, mildly interesting.
Who else is almost dead?
I don't know, this is just kind of a fun movie to watch. If you turn your brain off, like many of the other slasher movies are, but really turn your brain off for this one. And, if you can look past some of the acting stuff, there's some fun to be had here. Yes, it's not, like, completely lore accurate. I know, but we got the movie. I'm glad we got it instead of not getting it. In other words, I'd rather this movie be as imperfect as it is and get what we got rather than have nothing. So, yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I kind of enjoy this movie. I'll watch it from time to time, and I'll give it 3 out of 5, unashamedly. Could have been better. Of course it could have been better. But once again, we just got one heck of a fight at the end. And not just once, but twice. We got 2 big fights of the 2 main characters in there. So that's cool. So if they ever do another one, I hope they keep that kind of vision intact and just kind of steer more towards a relevant and cool story rather than what we were given. So, and, keep a little more respectful of both franchises, not just one. So anyway, that's all for now. I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think down below. Join the Gene Bank and get in on the conversation. I love to hear comments. I respond to everybody. Let me know what you thought about this movie. Am I way off base here on giving it more entertainment points than, horror movie points? Or do you agree? Was this movie just kind of entertaining popcorn that, if not completely respectful, it did try to keep both series in their traditional roles and, gave us the fight we'd all been spoiling for decades. So let me know what you think once again. And I have one more movie in the series to do, and then I'll do a ranking video, and then I'll be done with Nightmare on Elm Street for quite a while, I'm sure. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Genome. Just waiting for the next Battle Royale between horror icons. Out.